In this video, we'll be looking at digital storytelling, which basically just means telling a narrative in multimedia format. I'm Mark Pegram, and I'll be taking you through this material. Here's the usual copyright notice that you see at the start of all the online videos. Now, let's get started. Digital storytelling is not really a single tool. Rather, it's a technique which can make use of numerous different Web 2.0 tools and also mobile apps. As we go through this video, I'll be introducing a number of digital storytelling services, and I'll suggest quite often that you might like to pause the video to go and explore these services for yourself. What you're looking at here is a storybook created with the Storybird service. Storybird provides a huge bank of stock images that you can use for free. You add your own narrative or text, and the final product is produced as a storybook whose pages you can turn online. You can also embed your storybook wherever you like. The particular example that you see here was created by a Hong Kong teacher of English for his beginner English students, and the page that you see is actually a page of his wiki with the Storybird book embedded in it. If the Storybird service seems of interest to you, you might like to pause this video and go and have a look at the example that you can see on the screen. It's a book called The Sad Puppy, intended obviously for young learners. The next few slides show a worked example of an assignment created by a Hong Kong teacher that I worked with in 2014. You might like to pause this video from time to time in order to look closely at the annotations she has added to her screenshots of Storybird. The finished storybooks were then embedded on a Padlet discussion board for Father's Day. The fathers were invited to come and look at the books that had been written for them and to respond if they wished to do so. The link to the Happy Father's Day Padlet wall was then advertised on the school's Facebook page in order to reach as many parents as possible. Although Storybird is really designed for the production of books for and by young learners, it can be used in other ways as well. What you're looking at here is a statement of teaching philosophy produced by a pre-service teacher in 2012. She's chosen to use Storybird to express her philosophy. You might like to pause the video and go and have a look at the link that you can see at the bottom of the screen. While Storybird is a web-based service, there are also plenty of mobile apps around which can be used for digital storytelling. Sock Puppets, for example, has been extremely popular with early childhood and primary teachers. You might like to check it out in the iTunes store. At the same time, you could do a search in iTunes or Google Play for other digital storytelling apps. Smilebox is a service which is available both in a web-based version and as an app. It allows you to tell a story in pictures, and you can accompany those pictures with text, icons, and an audio track. What you're looking at here is a Smilebox created by a pre-service teacher to showcase some learning resources and learning activities from the classroom. If you're interested in checking out Smilebox, you might like to pause this video and go to the address at the bottom of the screen to see an example. SnapGuide is a service that can be used to tell a different kind of story. It's often used to create instructions or recipes. To check it out, feel free to pause the video and go to the address at the bottom of the screen. Another service which is available both on the web and in app format is Capsules. It's been enormously popular with teachers over recent years. Essentially, it's timeline software. You create a series of boxes which you can arrange chronologically. In each box, you can add different kinds of multimedia materials. You can add text, you can add images, you can add audio files, and you can add videos. The example that you see here was created by a primary teacher so that her students could keep track of their recordings of changes in the schoolyard which they observed through the seasons. By the time they got to the end of this exercise, they could look back and they could see their multimodal recordings of how the schoolyard had looked throughout the changing months. Here's a rather different example where a pre-service teacher has presented their learning journey in pictures through the Capsule service. If you'd like to get a closer look at Capsules, you might like to pause the current video and go and have a look at the example at the address that you can see on the screen. This particular example tells the story of the election of Barack Obama in 2008, using a variety of media formats. Note that you will need Adobe Flash in order to be able to view this and other examples of capsules. Here's another very different example to give you an idea of the range of possibilities with capsules. This one was created by a librarian I worked with on a course that I ran a few years ago, and she used capsules to explain the steps that you need to take to use the EndNote software. So we're getting away a little bit from storytelling per se here, but as you can see, there are great possibilities for using these types of services in different ways. You might like to pause the video once again and go and have a look at this example. TikiToki is another multimedia timeline service with a slightly different format, as you can see in this example here, which looks at the Tunisian protests. Here's an example of a history of Australian television broadcasting created on TikiToki by a Melbourne-based lecturer I worked with a few years ago. And if TikiToki multimedia timelines seem like something you or your students could work with, you might like to pause the video at this point and go and check out this example, as well as the other examples that are available on the TikiToki homepage. MyHistro is a hybrid service with a lot of potential. Essentially, it combines the idea of a multimedia timeline with maps. So you can move across a map as you move through time. This particular example was created by a pre-service teacher, indicating various important events in her life and where they occurred prior to beginning her studies as a future teacher. And here's another pre-service teacher who's used MyHistro to map out her educational history, and she's then embedded this map into her ePortfolio. If you'd like to check out MyHistro, you might like to pause the video again and go to the address that you can see at the bottom of the screen. This is an interactive history of the Olympic Games, where you can move across the map or you can move through time in order to navigate the information presented. Pulling all of this together, we can see that digital storytelling can use a variety of media, software, and platforms. As we said at the beginning, digital storytelling is not a tool. It's a technique which can make use of a wide variety of different Web 2.0 tools and platforms, and also a wide variety of mobile apps. The essence of a digital story is that there is a narrative format and a multimedia production. Of course, many of the platforms that we've looked at lend themselves to conveying other types of information as well. It's not always necessarily only about stories, but certainly you can tell stories through these platforms. When students are creating digital stories, it's possible for the students themselves and for teachers to focus on the process of story creation or on the content that's being represented. Privacy may be an issue if students are revealing their identities in digital stories. There are, of course, ways around this, but if students do show their faces or reveal their names, it's probably best to host their stories in password-protected spaces. In this video, we've looked at a small selection of the digital storytelling platforms which have been popular with educators over recent years. For a summary of what we've been saying, but also for links to many other digital storytelling platforms, please go to the digital storytelling page of the Digital Learning website. You can see the address at the bottom of the screen.